Thank you. So I'm not going to do too many introductions. I'm also from the Northwest University in South Africa, not in Cape Town, unfortunately, in a small town called Potchefstroom, not far from Johannesburg. So today I'm going to be talking about cooperative learning, and some of my colleagues from South Africa this morning spoke about collaborative learning. Collaborative learning, we know, is a teaching learning strategy that we use to allow for student engagement and to promote active learning. But there are definitely challenges in that, and many of our students don't like to do cooperative learning or group work. We have learned through research that by incorporating the 5 principles of cooperative learning, it definitely does make a difference, and it does actually help to structure the group work a little bit more and assists with more successful group work than just a random collaboration that often happens in a classroom context. And we also know from research that cooperative learning has been successful in promoting self-directed learning, which is also one of the focuses of our research at the moment. So I used a design-based approach when designing the course. I used different technologies, which I'll talk about in a moment. It was for distance students, and the purpose was to promote active engagement, where students had the opportunity to critique each other's work, to improve the final task, and to take responsibility for their own learning. And to do this, obviously, I had to embed the 5 principles of cooperative learning in the course. And that also then involved providing students with roles and responsibilities within the group so that those 5 principles of cooperative learning could be stimulated. And obviously, in the process, the ultimate goal was to promote active engagement. So the 3 design cycles I did over a period of 3 years with different groups of students, but in the same module, and with adaptations to the course design as the information and the data came in. The affordances of working in groups, like I said, is to provide an opportunity for students to get actively involved and to exchange ideas. And the cooperative learning is slightly more structured than just a normal group work. So the task was to also assist in motivating learning. It was also there to promote problem solving and to assist with creative and critical thinking. So these are the 5 elements, and some of my colleagues this morning spoke a little bit more about this as well, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. But I'll just quickly run through what the 5 elements of cooperative learning are. The first one is positive interdependence, where all group members are dependent on each other. And basically what needs to happen is the facilitator needs to embed these principles by doing specific things in the course so that these principles are evident and so that they are actually functioning within the course. The second one is individual accountability, where each group member is responsible for mastering the work. Promotive interaction refers to the fact that all members are responsible to help and to provide feedback within the group. And interpersonal and small group skills, obviously that has to do with the interaction of the group members with each other. Group processing is where the group actually reflects on the task that they are working on. So it was a blended learning course. So again, the principles of blended learning were embedded also. We all know there are a number of definitions for blended learning, but basically what it boils down to is there's some kind of integration of face-to-face interaction with some form of web-based teaching. And here technology is really important to provide that collaborative space for working, especially in a distance learning environment. Active learning experiences and student-centered environments is also what I obviously try to embed in the course, with the emphasis on collaboration. All right, and it's one of the challenges really is in that blended learning environment and with distance education students is to promote that active student engagement, because many distance education students actually want to just get on with it on their own. They like to do the course in their own time. It's often after hours, and they're not really interested in that kind of collaboration. So this is really something that I tried to incorporate into the course so that one could realize that active engagement with each other and also to stimulate those social skills that I was talking about. And blended learning obviously has the potential to assist with the increasing of the student engagement. There are a number of hurdles, obviously, when trying to promote student engagement, and that has to do with the way in which the course is blended, the role of the learner in that engagement. Sometimes they don't know what exactly is my task. How am I supposed to get involved in the course? Lack of indicators that measure engagement, and obviously students find it difficult sometimes to transition between the online mode and the face-to-face mode. So that also can be a challenge. Right, so my research is underpinned by social constructivism, again with that focus on the collaboration and ultimately promoting the active student engagement. It was an interpretive, qualitative, design-based research approach where there was collaboration between the researchers and the practitioner, myself as the facilitator of the course, as well as the researchers in the group. And it was a design-based process. So this, anybody who's worked with design-based research will know this figure, but this is what the research was based on. The study was the culmination of 3 phases. So I repeated the process 3 times of the design research process, which involved analysis and exploration, design construction, and evaluation and reflection. And the goal ultimately of the analysis and exploration was to understand the problem by obviously looking at literature and also having discussions between the researchers and the facilitator to understand what are the problems associated with online groups and also the lack of student engagement. And then the design and construction phase was obviously to focus on the development of the initial design and then obviously improvements on those designs. And finally, evaluation and reflection phase involved the iterative testing and refining of the design over those 3 iterations. It was a postgraduate degree in mathematics education, the context of the study, for distance education students, like I mentioned, part-time students, blended learning, and it was students who were residing in various regions in South Africa and Namibia, diverse in terms of age, race, culture, and educational background, and those are the number of participants for the various cycles. Concerning the data collection, 3-year period, like I've mentioned, and the data basically was in the form of individual interviews and document analysis, which took the form of post-course interviews, Google Doc comments, coding that was done, as well as WhatsApp group coding on discussions that took place in WhatsApp groups. I'm just going to skip through this. It's just some of the details on the research method. I used Atlas TI, and it was a deductive approach, thematic step-by-step analysis, and also then just the measures that we used for validity and reliability. So the initial design of the course was based on the principles derived from literature. And these are the ones specifically that we highlighted in the course with the purpose of promoting active engagement, ensuring the collaboration in the form of cooperative learning, and embedding those 5 principles of cooperative learning. So the 3 main initial design principles were collaborative active learning strategies were to be incorporated. The second one was the purpose and goal of the course should be clearly defined, communicated, and reinforced to enhance student engagement. And thirdly, self and peer assessment, the flipped classroom approach, and recorded lectures are suggested as methods to promote student engagement. So these are the pointers from literature that we used. The implications thereof would be the following: to include cooperative learning strategies based on the 5 principles of cooperative learning, and that also included role allocation, and I'll talk a little bit about that role allocation in a moment. The second design principle had to do with clear and regular communication in all fields between the facilitator and the students, between students and each other, and finally the incorporation of a flipped classroom approach where self and peer assessment were implemented. So those were the initial design principles that were used. So continuing the course design, it was navigated by a learner management system, Sakai. Some of you will obviously know that one. Flipped classroom approach was used where the content was presented to the students through learning material as well as lecture recordings, where the content was presented in those recordings. And then after engaging with the content, the students were given specific tasks and assignments. They were divided into groups of 2 or 3 students. They didn't know each other at all. They met each other actually on a Google Doc where they were to work cooperatively from there onwards in that online environment. And they were also assessed individually and as a group as a whole. And the Google Doc basically served as the platform for the students to interact with each other. And it was also the basis in which the facilitator could stimulate those 5 elements of cooperative learning. So they were given an icebreaker just to get to know each other. And I know some of my colleagues spoke about the icebreaker this morning. It had nothing to do with any content area that the students were working in, but more personal, just to get to know each other, like who am I, where do I come from, what are some of my hobbies, etc. So the members were also given specific roles in the groups, and those roles needed to be fulfilled so that there was an even work distribution. I mentioned some of the challenges, or I mentioned there are challenges with group work, and one of the main challenges with group work is participants don't always know what their role is. So by providing a role allocation, each member knows exactly what is expected of them. And it also provides an opportunity for equal work distribution, because we also all know in an unstructured group, often the student that is the eager one, the one that wants to work hard, that wants to get the high marks, that person often takes the lead and the others just go along with it for a ride. So that role allocation is really important. So concerning their contribution, they were to contribute obviously to the academic content of the assignments, and each one was given a specific section of the work for which they would take responsibility, but everybody was responsible for the overall project at the end. By allocating a specific responsibility to each member, those principles of individual and group accountability and positive interdependence are stimulated. Also, there were other tasks that needed to be done in the course, but yeah, that each one had a specific role to play in those tasks. So each one had a job description, and just for example, there was, for example, a group leader, there was a communication and a technical and a social skills officer, and that person, for example, would take charge of proofreading and editing of the final documents, and also ensuring that all members were comfortable with the technology that they had to use. Those are just some of the things apart from the academic content that they had to contribute towards. Also, then they worked collaboratively, like I said, on that Google Doc, and they were able to comment on each other's work. They were actually asked or instructed to comment on each other's work so that they could improve the quality of the overall assignment. And they, again, we were stimulating the principle of group processing. So the facilitator also had access to the Google Docs and could monitor the work and maintain that active communication. That was one of the design principles that we mentioned right from the start. So continuing the results, resulting from the participants' feedback in each of the phases, the design of those various phases over the 3 years was adapted. And the instructional modifications basically were as follows, as you see on the screen. So in addition to the cooperative learning elements that were embedded in the course, and also the lecturer feedback and assessments, that was there throughout all 3 phases. In addition to that, in phase 2, we incorporated peer assessment, as well as live synchronous Zoom sessions. And then in phase 3, after again analyzing data and looking at what the feedback was from the students, we included self-assessment and also social media for education in the form of a WhatsApp. So that just explains the process of the design that I mentioned earlier. Feedback was very positive from the students in the whole process. And like I said, initially, when we spoke to the students, they really said, oh no, do we really have to do group work? We are not even close to each other. We don't even know each other. But after actually going through the whole process, the feedback was really positive. And you can have a look at some of the comments that they made there. One challenge that was identified was that participants took a while to get to know each other and to trust each other in the work domain. Initially, they said they would like to work with somebody that they know, and that they know what their quality and standard of work is. But as the design changed and as they got into the whole process, that no longer became an issue for them. To increase the contact with other group members also, in the process, we decided to incorporate those additional elements. So that was using the peer assessment and the live synchronous Zoom sessions. So phase 3, that was now the phase that we designed after the feedback after phase 2. Again, there was positive feedback. And in this case, the cooperative learning principle of group processing still needed some attention according to the comments that the students gave. And that's why we included self-assessment and we included the WhatsApp group, so that we could promote the whole principle of group processing. So in conclusion, the focus now is on the design principles that we worked through in the whole process. So from the initial design principles that we had, the improved design principles are in the right-hand column. And this now occurred over those 3 iterations of the whole design-based process. So not only did we implement collaborative active learning strategies, but we implemented cooperative learning strategies with the emphasis on those 5 principles of cooperative learning so that we could enhance the student engagement. Secondly, yes, we did make use of the communication. Clear and regular communication between facilitating students with each other is encouraged to enhance student engagement. And finally, self and peer assessment, the flipped classroom approach was used, recorded lectures was used, as well as live synchronous sessions, the inclusion of social media for education, and those are what we suggested as methods to promote and improve student engagement. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.